But I think one of the reasons why these people have this deep-seated anger and resentment is there's a bunch of people out there that have these lives that are deeply unsatisfying, because I think somehow or another, through momentum and just through just things falling into place the way they are, and people trying to fit their lives around the way these pieces have fallen into place, there are so many people that are working all day long doing something that is deeply unsatisfying and almost painful to them.
Yeah, soul killing.
Soul killing. They're stuck in traffic all day, and then they're stuck in a cubicle after that. They relish the time to take a shit in the bathroom and look at their phone. I mean, they literally do that. That's a highlight of someone's day. They get in traffic on the way home. They get home after that, they're watching television, and they're fucked. They have deep debt. This is not like there's this soul-killing thing is not giving them any freedom.
The debt's huge, dude. And you know what? You just sit there and go, and you look at what people make, and you sit there and go, you can make quite a lot of money by average Joe standards and still not be in good shape. So I know people turn around, make good living, really good living, and turn around and go, I'm just holding my head above water.
Yeah.
Right? And so you go, okay, if you're holding your head just barely, what's a person making a third or a quarter of what you're making doing? I mean, this is really, when you talk about revolutions happening and things going down in weird, unpredictable, negative ways, and we've talked about this before, you let enough of your society fall into the loser class, for lack of a better word, winners and losers in society. Every society can suck up a certain amount of people not able to make it. But if that number gets large enough, revolutions happen.
I think so too, but I think that revolution doesn't necessarily have to be violent. I think the revolution can be a revolution of action and ideas. And I think that there's a ton of people out there that are probably listening to this that would like to be able to do something else.
Absolutely.
Whether it's make furniture.
Well, they don't want a revolution.
Right.
They want to do something that's not soul killing.
Yeah, if you make furniture for a living, and you feel a great satisfaction out of that, and you sell that furniture, look, man, making furniture feels good. If you can do that, you could cut those corners perfectly and sand everything down nice and stain it, and then it's done, and you get the satisfaction, and you sell it to someone, and that pays your bills. That is infinitely more satisfying than being stuck in some fucking cubicle working for someone that you don't want to work for, having to have these stupid fucking office meetings, talking to people in human resources, sitting down with your supervisor where they evaluate your job performance, and you're not really, you really need to be enthusiastic about this company. This company is your future. You're like, fuck, kill me now. There's a lot of people out there that would way rather do something else, and I hope they understand that they can.
Let's talk about that, because we're in that. We're in that subject because we've been talking about us and podcasting and new media and whatever. But really, and I rarely like to give advice, because you don't want to be responsible for people acting on it and having it not turn out well. But what I tell people is two things. Right now, the United States of America, the way it's built, is built to help industry and corporations and companies. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be Microsoft. It can be you. Right?
Yeah, you can have your own thing.
And let's talk about the furniture builder. Once upon a time, there are huge things in your way, including needing to get loans and all these other things to just start a business. So you're behind the 8 ball right away, and the pressure's on, because if it doesn't work, you're in debt. Whereas, we started these podcasts, there's no brick or mortar. Now you've got just the Rogan Tower. It's a little bit different. But once upon a time, it's like in the back of your bedroom, and you've got a company, and it's got a show, and people are listening. If you make your furniture, and you don't have to have a brick and mortar store, but you can put a website up, make it with Squarespace or one of those other things, and all of a sudden you have a business out of your house, the freedom, the satisfaction, the ability to set your own hours, and here's the best part, the fact that if you start making a lot of money somehow, you're not going to have your boss cut your commissions. I knew sales guys who made so much money that their bosses cut their commissions because you can't make more than your bosses. Well, listen, when you have your own small business, the sky's the limit. If you make $10 million, you make $10 million.
Yeah.
So I always tell people that if you can, and it's not always something they can do, maybe you do it on the side when you've got your regular job, starting a small business now, in this climate that we have right now, is not only possible, it's not that much of a gamble, because if worst comes to worst, you didn't invest $100,000 you didn't have starting it all the time, right?
Yeah.
That website didn't cost you that much. The investment for the tools you may have had already. Podcasting's a perfect example. We make business, like my buddy says, we sell zeros and ones.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Well, it's never been easier to have a website either.
No.
Easier with companies like Squarespace, you could develop a website. You could literally build an amazing website in a fucking
sell
hour.
your furniture.
And you have a free online store with it, and they have these drag and drop user interfaces. You use photos, you drag them onto there, size it in place, boom. Next thing you know, you've got a website. Sell your furniture, sell whatever the fuck you make, whether you make clothes or you're designing backpacks, or there's a lot of people out there that have interests and they've never pursued those interests because they're fucking tired from doing boring, soul-sucking
It's
job.
hard to go to work and put your effort into that and then come home and then work for yourself. It's very hard. But I'll tell you what, there's a part, like you said, there's a part of it that once you start making stuff for yourself, that's self-motivated, right? I told somebody to start a podcast. I said, the first time you get some feedback email, that will kick you in the rear end to keep doing it. It becomes life is a verb, I always say, and you have to actually act. But by acting, you change everything in your future. Another guy said to me, it's a great line. He said, with podcasts, it's not always how many people are listening. Sometimes it's who they are, right? So my grandmother's philosophy was always that you should keep walking and talking. But in her era, walking and talking meant going and shaking people's hands. And now you can network like through the internet, and you never are really shaking people's hands, but you may have a podcast with only 100 listeners. But if one of those listeners is some guy somewhere else who says, oh my God, this guy's furniture is great, or whatever, I'm gonna, maybe you can come and start giving a Pottery Barn, okay? I mean, things open up in ways that you can't predict because you started doing something.
And because you have legitimate passion for what you're doing, that resonates with people that experience that. Yeah. If they I can't tell you how many artists that I've discovered online just through Instagram or through Twitter.
Well, it's a creative revolution.
Yes, in an amazing way. And I hope, and I think there's way more creative people out there than we realize.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they would love to have some sort of an opportunity to do something like that, and especially like an artist. Someone who's an artist, man, there's never been a better time to be an artist because you could showcase your work. And look, if you send me something cool and, you send it to me on Twitter, and I'll fucking retweet it. Totally. I retweet things all the time. And all that takes is someone else has to see that and say, wow, that's amazing. And then it just propagates to all these different people's Instagram feeds and all these people's Twitter feeds. And next thing you know, you've got a business and you're up and running. And it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be quick.
But the job you're doing now ain't easier, Cricky. The soul-killing one ain't easier, Cricky.
But people think like, oh, how long is that going to take? Oh, but when you start out doing a podcast, well, we got 10 downloads. Well, that's how it works.
We all were there once.
Yeah, I
Richard Simmons.
Finding
right?
Richard Simmons, where they're trying to figure out why Richard Simmons went into hiding.
What's so great about that idea, though, and again, and you at home can learn this too. What's so great about that idea is that they instantly tied their podcast to somebody who already had tons of fans.
Yes.
Right? So you sit there and go, I don't know who these guys are with this, but I'm a huge Richard Simmons fan, so I'll listen. And that's like instant audience, isn't
There's
it?
another podcast called Guys We Fucked. These girls came up with this podcast. This is one that I always use in this example because who are the girls from Guys We Fucked? Find their names. These comedians from New York, they came, and they're actually going to be on the podcast Monday.
Ooh, that was a clever time.
I didn't mean to, but I used them as an example because we just did this earlier today.
Christina Hutchinson and Corinne Fisher.
And they came up with this clever idea for the title, and it became huge. I mean, it's always top 10. It's like one of the top 10 comedy podcasts. And people say, oh, it's saturated. No, it's not, stupid. Just do something that's good. Stop saying it's saturated. If you're good, it'll stand out. This idea that, oh, it's easy for you, sir. Everybody's got these stupid barriers they put in their own head. You gotta resist those goddamn things because they don't do you any good, and they certainly define the potential for your future in a negative way. It's not self-serving, and it's not even real. You put this artificial ceiling on the potential for what you're doing. If you hit a wall, okay, that just means you need to regroup and rethink. It doesn't mean that wall's there, especially when it comes to something like social media or like a podcast. Something where you're putting out a piece of art, putting out something that you're creating. There's no wall as far as like how many people enjoy it or how far it's going to go. It's just, it is what it is, and if people don't like it, make it better. If they like it less, fix that. Figure out a way to do it. You can do that. And this idea that there's no way to get past the starting block today is just ludicrous. It's crazy. And it's just this poor thinking. And people that are trapped in bad situations, one of the problems is you feel like this is your future. You feel like you're fucked. And you can't get out of that. There's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no rainbow. And if you feel like that alone can be incredibly defining and limiting. But if you can look at it, if you look at yourself objectively and say, okay, I kind of am lucky. I'm a credit card debt. I'm working in a shitty job. I don't like what I'm doing. But I have some ideas. I need to feed those fucking ideas. I need to feed them and water them. And I need to set aside a certain amount of time every day to just try to make those things happen. You can do that.
I have a big, I like big, what's it like the fight speed, things like that. Like the image,
It's like you got. That's what it's like.
the image I have of what we're talking about, at least that it's a little like a running back in football who takes the ball and he goes forward and there's no hole. All you run into is the back of the offensive line. But if you keep hitting, if a hole is going to open up, boom, you score through. Now there's no guarantee like the hole will be there, but there is a guarantee that if you're not continually smacking at it, then when it opens up, you will be there, right? And so I don't know about you, Joe, you've had a charm in how well you've done, but I mean, some of us have failed many times.
I've failed at a bunch of
I'm
shit.
teasing you.
I really have.
But I
That's
mean,
why-
but I guess what I'm saying is, I remember being a TV reporter at a small station, and I would get out of work at like midnight, and the story that I just spent all day on aired, and it was awful. And I would get out, and I would literally, this is when I still had quite a bit of hair. I would sit there and you pull your hair out. You go, what am I doing?
Right.
This is horrible. And I look back on those now, and I think, what if you had just given up then, right? Or the podcast. I mean, do you know how my wife did a great thing for me? We'd had that company that I just told you about. We were trying to do the new media thing. It just fell apart like everybody's companies were starting to do. And I wasted a lot of time and a lot of money in my life doing that. And she would have been totally justified in saying, that's it. You're going to Indianapolis, going to talk radio show job, wherever they'll hire you. But she didn't. She said, you know what? You should try this next thing. You can do it. And here we are. And I
focus on like Kevin Hart or someone like that, some very famous and successful comedian, all you see is him now flying around private jets, wearing a new pair of sneakers every day, driving around in Bentleys. You just see that. You don't see him being a young kid in Philadelphia, going to open mic nights, scratching and clawing.
MC Hammer
jokes.
selling the tapes out of the hatchback.
All that stuff, man. There's a path, and we think of people like, you see an old person walking down the street, you go, oh, that person's always been an old person. No, that was a baby. That was a baby that became a 90-year-old man. There's a progression that you're not witness to. You don't see it. And that takes place in everything. It takes place in authors. It takes place in comedians and musicians. There's a starting point, and then with time and focus, and as long as you reevaluate, you reassess, and constantly, objectively look at what you're doing, and then pursue it with passion and focus, you get better at things.
And you know what? Doing all those things ends up, it's funny that your life experiences create who you are. And all those things actually make you a more full, speaking of fire, but all those things make you a more full person. So that eventually that next endeavor is more prepared and more formative. And so you turn around and say, what was I like as a 23-year-old compared to what I'm like now? And I'm basically a different person. And you're a different person because of all these life experiences. I mean, you go to a SINCOM meeting with the big rep, well, you're more formidable afterwards, right? Sure. But if you don't put yourself in the position where life will come up to the plate and taking a swing, there are no guarantees you're going to get a hit. No guarantee. And you might even look foolish swinging, but there's no chance of it if you don't get in the batting box, right?
100%. And one of the things that I've found over the last few years in particular, I've done it in the past, but I did it because they were just goals that I was pursuing on the side, as well as doing stand-up and all the other things that I do in my life. But I've found that things that are completely unrelated to my career that are difficult enhance what I do. Whether it's
I like that.
yoga or running hills or archery or all these things that you incorporate. Yeah, sort of. But that's just because one of the things that I do is just talk about things that I'm interested in. But they make my focus better because they're hard and because I'm not good at it. So like when I do yoga, I'm not good at yoga. So when I do it, it's hard. It's a fucking struggle. And forcing myself to get through that 90-minute class and try 100% with every pose enhances my stamina for thinking and approaching other things.
Let's back around that because I'm very interested. So you and I are talking to the listeners, many of whom are already accomplished and well over their goals, but if they're not, they're listening to us. I'm thinking to myself, okay, if you're trying to design a society, we talk about revolution, if too many people are losers in the society, if you say to yourself, what really matters in the society is making more Americans happier living lives, more successful, doing what they want to do, in other words, empowering them to create. How different is that in terms of a setup from what our school system's designed to do now, which is a holdover to essentially make good factory workers? Right? I mean, if you said to somebody, listen, this entire country is built for you to become a businessman with your own business, you start your own company. If you taught that in the schools from the get-go and you had workshops and everybody's going to say, damn, we already do that in the schools, I already know. But I mean, if that was the entire goal of your education, to turn every student in that class into a small business person doing their own dreams someday, how would you do it differently than what you do now? Because to me, the biggest crime isn't that we have the kind of system we have, it's that we're not training people on how to utilize it. I mean, we have all these opportunities there. It sounds like a cliche, but we're doing it. And as you go through it, you say to yourself, well, why can't more people do this? Well, who told them they could? And who said? I mean, this is a little bit of a hand-holding, but I'm teaching this to my kids right now, right? I'm telling them, listen, don't go do the soul-killing job.
She goes, they make reading boring. And she goes, I go, but you like writing, right? You like writing? She goes, I like writing what I want to write about. They make writing boring.
So she's creative.
Yeah, but she's being silly. But the wisdom from a 9-year-old, we were just laughing and having fun talking about it, but the wisdom from a 9-year-old expressing how they make things that she likes boring. It's like, I think there's a certain amount that you have to do, right? There's a certain amount of the hard work.
Even in your business that you run.
Sure, learning grammar, learning language, a certain amount of that stuff is fucking boring. Once you get past that boring shit, you have the basic understanding how to communicate, how to add, how to count, multiply, how government works, all those different things that you should have sort of a base understanding of. Then, it's everyone has a different personality. They have different interests, different things that they would be really satisfied with. That's not encouraged. What's encouraged is go find a job. What's encouraged is go find some place that you can shove yourself into. Go find a square hole that you can stick in a round peg and just fucking jam it in there and shave down the top and the bottom so you slide in with all this extra space on the side and feel like shit for the rest of your life because you need a job, because you're in debt, because you have credit cards, because you have student loans, because that's what everybody does. And so you do it too. That's what's wrong. What's wrong is that we don't give, it's like, let them figure it out on their own, and it fucking takes forever. It took forever for me. The only thing that I had going for me was that I was crazy, and that I'd been spending most of my high school years fighting, so that I was already so far outside of anybody that I was so weird. I didn't fit in anywhere.
That was weird too. Isn't that funny?
I didn't feel like I had a pot. I knew one thing. I couldn't work like a regular job. Like I had to figure out something else. Because I mean, there's the idea of, it was literally the idea of being in an office was like torture.
Okay, can I just tell you? So that's the hinge point. So here's if I was creating a fantasy education system, the hinge point between what you just said is that you said I couldn't stand this, I couldn't work the real job, I couldn't fit into this, so I did something. I had to find another way. A lot of people get stuck with the "so I had to find another way" part.
Yeah.
Right? It's funny because your kids are young enough too, so you went through this. But when my kids were really young before they were in the school they're in now, we put them in one of those Montessori schools. The ones
How
that
are those? So like everybody goes together.
It's different school to school, but the basic concept is that you don't force the children to learn anything specific. You have all these things around, and the children go to what they want to do. So the upside is obviously that from the get-go, they're only reading what they're going to. The downside, of course, is that there's all this other stuff they're supposed to learn. It's the dichotomy between how do you were talking about needing to have the skills, those some basic foundational stuff. But something is also happening at that level, which is you're finding out which students are into this and would like to have a career in that. Other people are being touched by a foreign language in a way that they think, I'd like to learn more of it, I'd like to speak it fluently, I'd like to teach it. So in a way, you're already beginning to select what kids are into by exposing them to this stuff. Most of us find it boring, but there might be something. That's where I first found history as a discipline, right? If most kids say, oh God, the last thing I want to hear is some history, but I get turned on by it, okay, well then it's worth exposing you to all those things. I think the problem is, though, is that it would be great, for example, to have sort of a Montessori model. We say, okay, we spend our time on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now we want you to go around, and it has to be, you can't be playing video games unless playing video games is what you want to do for a living, and you're going to be able to do some educational work on it. But I would like to see more of a fostering for the fact that, listen, we're trying to create entrepreneurs here rather than trying to create drone workers on the Amazon assembly line. Now, if you end up on the Amazon assembly line anyway, great, good for you. I'm glad you can bring some food home. But the goal ought to be to let you start a business and maybe employ a bunch of other people,
Yeah, and the goal would be to have less unhappy, dissatisfied.
But it could create some more stable society.
But also happy. Yeah. It creates more satisfaction. The people that I know that get to do what they want to do for a living, it's not like their lives are completely happy. Everybody's got problems. No matter who you are.
Absolutely. What do you know? There's a Kanye West who said rich people have problems, just different problems. I mean, everybody's got these challenges, but like you said, there's not a lot more stressful than having a ton of credit card debt, wondering, if you're going to lose your house, wondering how you're going to pay for your kids' education. And all those things are soul crushing.
Not only that, because you're in debt, you get nervous. So it suppresses your ability to
take
express
risks.
yourself, and take risks, because
It's a cycle.
you don't want to lose your gig. You don't want to, it's like, man, this
And you're
is no way
tired.
to live.
You're
Yes.
tired. I mean,
Yeah.
the one thing is, as you get older, I mean, it's funny because getting older is one of those things that you can only understand when you get there. So all through your life, you're going through these, God, isn't this the interesting part of being in your 30s or being in your 40s? So as I go into my 50s now, I'm sitting here going, energy is so under-talked about.
Yeah.
You know, the ability to, like my buddy who wrote me and said, I feel like I screwed up my life. I didn't take enough chances. I played it safe and now I'm so unhappy. He says, and I just can't motivate myself at 50 years old anymore, energy-wise, to start over. Energy is underrepresented.
Well, tell
it's
that
hard.
guy he's got to fix his health.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's
See,
what it is. Your health is your engine.
Yeah,
Your
it is.
health is literally the chassis, the tires, the brake, the engine of your vehicle that you use. Like, too many people don't pay attention to it.
the lack of energy is killing. Energy gets older,
It's
especially.
not just that. It changes your ability to do things. If you don't have energy, not only will you not have the energy to pursue things, but you won't be able to do this anymore. If you have energy and enthusiasm and say, like, you're healthy and you want to write a book, you're going to have thoughts that'll come in your mind that won't come in your mind for yourself. That's fucking huge. That's huge for anything you're trying to pursue, whether we're talking about furniture making, whether we're talking about being an author, whatever it is.
Let's talk about ideas for a minute, because I think that's another one. When we talk about small businesses or starting as an entrepreneur, I'm one of those people that is not sure that we don't have a finite number of ideas to each of us, and all of them are valuable enough, even if they don't appear to be on the surface, to write down. As a matter of fact, I went to a business meeting a couple years ago with one of these TV guys I was just talking to. And we're in this business meeting, and we're all on our phones, and he pulls out an old-fashioned journal, and he just starts writing. And I looked at him and I thought, in one sense, it looks like a dinosaur, but I went out and bought it. And now, it's crazy how often, all your writings, and a lot of them I look back on now and I go, that's still stupid. But other ones I look back and I go, God, I didn't know what this idea was at the time. And 5 years later, this idea is really good. Look, I guess what I'm saying is that if you want to take in this book of religious meaning, God only gives you so many, write down and cherish the ideas. But there is something to that. Folks, what really is going to make you unique sometimes is the way your brain works differently. Anyone's brain has ever existed on the planet. That's valuable right there. Write down what comes out of your mind.
You can capture those.
Yes, capture them.
Capture them. Those
And sometimes the idea isn't good until the second half arrives, right? So idea number 1's in your book from 5 years ago. Idea number 2 that finally completes that idea arrives later. I mean, I had a friend who was so creative, and he said he gets the best ideas at night. So he just turns on the light at the side of the table, writes it down in the book, and by morning there's another idea down there.
Yeah.
And quantity has a quality all its own. And sometimes a book filled with interesting ideas out of your individual unique head will help you later on. So write them down.
Yeah, you have
There's no
to.
downside.
I have an app on my phone where I can just, the Notes app. You
Yeah.
ever use that?
Sure,
where
sure.
It has like a microphone.
It's filled
I
with stuff.
talk into that thing.
I do too.
And it dictates it really almost perfectly. So I'll have an idea and I'll just be driving on the road, press that button, I start talking into it, and then I put it down. I got it. Like I got that. I captured it.
Think about people who had one fantastic idea in their life and built their whole life on it.
Yeah.
And you never know which idea that's going to be. And you know what? I was an improv. Again, you know more about this than I do, but I was a theater major for my first 2 years of college. And we did improv comedy. And the guy who taught us improv in high school, really, he had a great line. He said, that part of your brain, like and you attract